Good morning, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of TNT. My name is Omkar, or you might know me as Producer O. And I welcome you to this episode. It happens to be the episode number 651, and it happens to be a lovely Friday morning. So, happy Friday! And today it's going to be a support family episode. So, we have Stacey and Megan talk about some important topics. So before getting started, one thing that we do on a daily basis, that is roll call. So comment your name down below so we know that you are present. And without further ado, let's get started.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I wanted to go over the seller's disclosure notice that we send out with our listings for our sellers to fill out and go over a few parts that I find where we have information that's missed being filled out, and wanted to make sure that you guys take the time to talk to your sellers about it while they're filling this out so they understand the importance of it. As you know, at the top, concerning the property at, it's the address of the property. It's the whole address, including street number, street name, city, state, and zip code. So please make sure that is filled out. This gets missed a lot. Seller is or is not occupying the property. If unoccupied by seller, how long since the seller has occupied the property, or has the seller never occupied the property? So that needs to be filled out. A lot of times I see people put they are occupying the property, and then they'll put the date in there that they moved in. So that would not be the correct information, but I just want to make sure you guys talk to your sellers about making sure they get this filled out. Okay, section 1, yes, no, or unknown. If they don't know, they need to mark unknown, or they need to mark no, or they need to mark yes. So make sure that every blank is filled out, guys. This is so important. So here is where I typically have to send these back and ask for them to be fully completed. On these items, yes, no, or unknown, you have these, and then it asks you, are they electric or gas, and the number of units. So we need all of this information out. This gives the buyers information. It also helps make sure the sellers are giving the information about the property. It helps everybody to be able to have this information. Even for the listing, if I'm missing something, if the seller's disclosure is filled out properly, I can look at it and get the information without having to ask somebody. So please, let's make sure that they are filling these out. Garage door openers, number of units, and number of remotes. Whatever they put here for their number of remotes, those remotes must convey with the sale of the property. Same with security system, owned or leased from, and then the information would go there who it's leased from. I know we now have the lease addendum that goes with the property if there's something like a security system or something that's leased. So we do need to make sure that's disclosed. Water heater, electric, gas, how many units? But same with AC, how many units? We need to know all of those things. But yes, everything needs to be filled out with yes, no, or unknown. On page 2, this top section right here gets missed a lot just because it's scooted towards the top. Do they have lawn sprinkler systems or a septic or on-site sewer facility? And again, please make sure at the top of every single page that the address is on there. Then this section, I find people skip a whole bunch of these questions. How's the water provided? Who provides their water? Was the property built before 78? What type of roof do they have, and what is the age? Is there an overlay on it? Are you, the seller, aware of any items listed in section 1 that are not in working condition? Please explain. So again, making sure that everything is completely filled out helps all parties together. Section 2, yes or no. If it's marked yes, fill it out. Section 3, yes or no. If it's marked yes, you fill out Y on the next page. Section 4, if there is something that was not listed on the above pages that the seller knows is in need of repair, they need to mark yes and fill it out here. If not, mark no and move on. Section 5 is about flood insurance and information like that. Here's the explanation for the purposes of this. They need to mark yes or no on each of these. If they've marked yes, they need to explain why. Page 4, again, address at the top. Make sure they answer section 6, section 7, yes or no. Section 8, please make sure if there's an HOA, they fill out all of the information here. This is probably the easiest place to get the information. As a homeowner, they should know what management company they pay their HOAs to. Are they mandatory? Are they voluntary? Is it annually, biannually, monthly? What is it? Then again, mark yes or no. The other one I wanted to really point out on here, any lawsuits or other legal proceedings directly or indirectly affecting the property includes but is not limited to divorce, foreclosure, heirship, bankruptcy, and taxes. Okay, guys, so if there is a couple that is in the midst of getting divorced, but only one of them is on tax rolls or records as owner of the house, then this still would need to be marked yes, unless they have a final, signed, sealed divorce decree that the judges signed off on and everybody knows where the proceeds are going. This needs to be marked yes. We're coming off of the year of COVID, where a lot of people had done forbearance. Some people may be into foreclosures at this point. They may be filing bankruptcy. There may be so many different examples, so we need to make sure that people see this. Any death on the property, except for those deaths caused by natural causes, suicide, or an accident unrelated to the condition of the property. So this doesn't come up very often, but one example I can give is when I, probably 6 or 7 years after being in the business, I worked for a different company, and we had a seller that had to actually mark yes to this question because there had been a person jogging outside of their home and somebody drove by and shot this person, and they unfortunately died in their front yard. So that's on the property. It had to be disclosed. So it was not a fun thing, but it has to be done. So let's make sure we are giving all the information we can with everything. So again, have them read these, mark yes or no. And if there's any answers yes, then that's where their explanation goes in. Section 9, this gets skipped a lot. The seller either has or has not attached a survey to the property. Do they have their property survey? And on a side note, if they do, please make sure they fill out the T47 and have it notarized to go with it. Within the last 4 years, have you, the seller, received any inspection reports from a person who regularly provides inspections and who are either licensed as inspectors or otherwise permitted by law to perform inspections, yes or no? This typically is if somebody bought the home within the last 4 years and they had an inspection done. If they don't have a copy of it, they still need to write it, the type of inspection, who did the inspection, and they need to try to contact that inspector and get a copy. That way we have it on file and we can provide it to whoever needs it if they ask for it. Do the sellers have any tax exemptions they're currently claiming? They need to mark that if they do. If they're an investor, they typically will not have any. Section 12, have you ever filed a claim for damage other than flood damage to the property with any insurance provider, yes or no? If they filed a claim for their roof and had their roof replaced, the answer would be yes on this because that's filing a claim. Have you, the seller, ever received proceeds for a claim for damage to the properties? Example, an insurance claim or settlement award in a legal proceedings, and not use the proceeds to make the repair for which the claim was made, yes or no? If yes, explain. So we've seen this come up actually in the last couple of years when we've had buyers where the seller had filed a claim for the roof and then never fixed the roof, and so they, yes, took money and didn't make the repair. What ended up happening is they have to repair the roof before closing, but that it would be something that needs to be disclosed. Section 14, does the property have working smoke detectors installed in accordance with the smoke detector requirements of Chapter 766 of the Health and Safety Code? Guys, here's the information right here to help them know what they need to check there. And then on the last page, please have them provide their current utility providers. They know who they pay their bills to, so it makes it very easy for us to give that information, or for the buyers to have it for when they purchase the property. Then we don't have to stop and ask, and the information's there. The other thing I just want everybody to note is the seller initials every single page 1 through 6 on the seller's disclosure, and then they also sign and date on page 5. So I'm hoping that you guys will go through these with your seller. You don't tell them what to mark, you just tell them they have to mark everything. They have to answer everything. Yes, no, unknown, yes or no. and then they need to elaborate with what the reasoning is if the answer is yes. They also, again, this is the biggest place people do not fill out this additional information. This is so important. So please make sure that all of this is filled out before it's sent to me, because if it's not, I will be sending it back to you to be filled out before we put it into MLS. So if you guys have any questions, I'm very happy to help, and look forward to talking to everybody. Good morning, everyone. I wanted to do my, I guess it's becoming a quarterly talk about surveys and T47s. Everybody who knows me knows this is my absolute favorite subject with contracts. This falls specifically on the 1 to 4 family residential contract. It also it does fall on the an improved property, new construction. I mean, it's in the contracts, but today we're going to discuss the one that's on the 1 to 4 family residential contract. At this moment, it does fall on page 3. I don't know yet if it's going to move with the new changes coming in about having to disclose if something is in a PID. So just know that it may slide a little bit, but the information should stay exactly the same. Okay, so right now on page 3 of the 1 to 4 family, at the top, guys, it is paragraph, and we're going to say 6C, survey. Now, we're going to talk about 2 things here. First, we're going to talk about a seller. If we have a seller, if they have provided us their survey, but they do not provide the T47 residential affidavit that goes with the survey, we need to pretend they don't even have a survey. Because if we can't provide that T47 affidavit, it will end up falling at the seller's expense. And here's why. So a lot of times if somebody has a survey that's put into MLS as part of the property, or the buyers mark that as a part of their offer, within so many days after the effective date of the contract, seller shall furnish to buyer and title company seller's existing survey of the property and a residential real property affidavit promulgated by the Texas Department of Insurance, which is also known as the T47 affidavit. In big bold letters, if seller fails to furnish the existing survey or affidavit within the time prescribed, buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense no later than 3 days prior to the closing date. So we're going to stop there for a minute. You have to have them together for this paragraph to work for the seller and or the buyer. Because without them together, the seller, if they don't provide them, whether we have the buyer or the seller, a new survey will be ordered at the seller's expense. If they do provide both of those things, we'll pick back up. If the existing survey or affidavit is not acceptable to the title company or the buyer's lender, the buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller or buyer's expense no later than 3 days prior to closing. So if both of those items are given within the time prescribed, and again, the T47 must be notarized, then whatever's negotiated at buyer or seller's expense is what happens. So please remember, guys, if we have a seller, if we have a survey, we have to have that T47. Otherwise, that survey really doesn't help our sellers out at all. So just know that. If we have a survey, we've had one recently where the house had a pool, but the survey didn't reflect the pool. We put the survey in MLS and put in big bold letters for information purposes only, and then we also made sure that we had that the buyer would have to provide their own new survey. So again, if that's ever sent over and we don't have a T47, please renegotiate that portion of the contract. So number 2 is within blank days after the effective date of this contract, buyer shall obtain a new survey at buyer's expense. Buyers is deemed to receive the survey on the date of actual receipt or within the date specified, whichever is earlier. Number 3 is within blank days after the effective date of this contract, seller at seller's expense shall furnish a new survey. So these are the other 2 that can be used. If we have a buyer and we know we're going to have to buy a new survey, please give this date enough time past the option period, past a couple other things, because if the survey is obtained, the buyer will have to pay for it whether they buy the house or not. So please, please, please don't put 3 days in there. Don't put 5 days in there. Give it, if we can, if the contract allowed, try to give it 15 days at least, 15 to 20 days to make sure we get past our option period if there is one, and everybody's comfortable moving forward. Otherwise, there may be a rush that has to be given or something like that. And the seller one, that's fine. Within so many days, the seller can purchase it. The other thing I want to point out about this second paragraph, if we have a buyer and we are saying, or a seller, but if this is marked and it says within, let's say 10 days after the effective date of this contract, buyer shall obtain a new survey at buyer's expense. Buyer is deemed to receive the survey on the date of actual receipt or the date specified in this paragraph, whichever is earlier. So if we have 10 days in there and we don't have that survey back within 10 days, this contract assumes the buyer has it, and therefore the buyer then doesn't have the extra time that they're supposed to be able to review it for the objections. It assumes that they have received it. So that's why we need to make sure there's enough time in there. So if you guys have any questions about this, again, this is my favorite paragraph of the contract. I love surveys. We talk about them a lot, and I know I go over this about once a quarter. So happy to hear from anybody if you need anything from me. Thanks. Everybody, want to talk about the third-party financing addendum? Let's make sure that we are filling out all of the information. I know when we're going through these, it's easy for a couple boxes to get missed, and we want to make sure we have them filled out, whether we have the buyer or the seller. So again, street address and city at the top. Conventional financing. So A gets marked. Does your buyer or does the buyer have just a first mortgage, or do they have a first and a second mortgage? This box right here under A1 is missed probably 80% of the time that I see between buyers and sellers. So guys, please, let's make sure we have a marked box here so we can all stay in compliance with the contract. So let's just make sure we have every blank filled in, the information filled in. So this covers conventional financing. This B covers the Texas Veterans Loan, which I had the privilege to work with Linda on a contract that had this. It was a little different and unique, and it was a great learning experience. So thanks, Linda, for that. We had sellers on that one, so that was interesting. FHA insured financing, make sure that's filled out. If you don't know what falls in this section, there's different types of FHA loans. So I think it would be a good thing to read up on those. There's like 2 or 3 Bs, 2 or 3 Ks. The majority of the time we see 2 or 3 Bs, but make sure you know what your buyer's getting and you've talked to their lender about what they're doing, and we fully understand it. VA guaranteed financing, USDA guaranteed financing, or reverse mortgage financing. The approval of financing, the buyer's approval. So there's 2 different parts, and I know we've talked about this. There is buyer approval and there's property approval. 2 different things. So the buyer's approval is when the buyer has turned in all their documents to the lender and the underwriter's gone through them and says the buyer is worthy to buy a house. They can qualify for up to this amount. Doesn't matter what the property is. Let's just get the buyer fully approved. We have several lenders we work with that can do that. They get the buyer fully approved and we don't have to worry about it. So whatever's put in here, it needs to be made sure that it's discussed with the lender that so many days the buyer can be fully approved and we don't have any issues. If you already have a buyer that's been through underwriting but just doesn't have a property, this may be one you want to check. The contract is not subject to buyer obtaining buyer approval because they already have it. So make sure that you are fully informed with the lenders. Property approval, completely separate, has to do with the appraisal, has to do with if there's any lender required repairs. If there's FHA, sometimes that does occur. If it's VA, sometimes that does occur. I would think even in conventional it can occur, like if there's a big hole in the roof, it may occur. So property approval is completely separate than buyer approval. So please remember that when we're working through contracts and negotiations. If you do have an FHA loan, or VA loan, you want to make sure you fill out this blank. If you want more information on how this blank works, it is one way you can negotiate an FHA or VA and not use the addendum for like the appraisal waiver, because with FHA and VA you cannot use that addendum. So this would be one place that you would work through that. And then make sure everybody has signed on page 2 and everybody's initialed on page 1. So let me know if you guys have any questions, and have a great day.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to join you again this morning on TNT. And my topic that I wanted to discuss is branding. And I wanted to ask you how your branding journey is going. So I understand that each and every one of you have a different journey currently going on your branding. Some have branding completely done and are on their way, whereas others are still kind of at the beginning and formulating ideas and plans to get their brand off the ground. So let's discuss different ways in branding yourself and gaining more business from building your brand. So the first thing to think about in the journey of branding is what you stand for as a person and how that transfers over to your brand. What are the top 3 items that you consider for yourself and your personal brand? Have you defined those? Have you actually sat down, brainstormed, and written them down or typed them up? However you are, whether you like pen and paper or digital on your computer. But nonetheless, how are you conveying yourself into your personal brand? So top 3 things with your personal brand. Some ideas may be being authentic. That's really important because you want to be authentic and relatable to try to capture more audience, correct? And be able to relate to everybody, not just some people. So how are you being authentic and relatable? What are you conveying with your brand? Are you showcasing when you're out and about what a day in the life of you looks like? Are you showing social proof of home inspections, offers written, closing days, all of the different things that go into real estate? Are you showing your daily activities off to anybody and everybody that's looking at you on social media channels? If you went right now and looked at whichever your preferred communication is, if you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, say Instagram, and you check your Instagram grid, what does that convey to somebody just looking at you for the first time online? Are you authentic? Are you true to yourself? Are you relatable? Are you showcasing which niches you are wanting to focus on? Are you showcasing your successes? What you do on a daily basis? How does your brand influence what you do on a daily basis? These are all different elements that go into building your brand, maintaining it, and expanding it. Obviously, we want your personal brand to grow over time. And we want you and your business to grow over time by building your personal brand. So let's think more about different ways to build your personal brand. Have you established hashtags? Are you currently using those in your branding? Have you established a tagline? How are you integrating the tagline into your brand? Are you putting it within the text on a caption? Are you creating graphics? Are you creating videos? Are you showing the face of your brand? Do you know who the face of your brand is? If somebody looks you up online, are they able to see you as the face of your brand? You are just as important as your brand, and even more so important. So being the face in front of the camera, whether it's a still image or as a video, if you're comfortable doing video, that's the face of your brand. How are you showcasing yourself as your brand? We can work on graphics all day long and change your brand in many different ways, and it still won't appeal to everybody and anybody that's out there, right? So how are you as a person appealing to anybody and everybody out there? Not just that brand logo that's developed or the tagline. Different things to think about as you continue to grow your brand. The more consistent that you are, the better your brand gets. So are you being consistent and posting on social media? Are you there? Are you networking with others on social media? Are you sending direct messages? Are you making comments? Are you setting aside a time each day, like when we're right before TNT, to comment and like and engage with your audience? Do you feel your audience is growing over time? Are you watching the statistics on your social channels? Are you gaining more followers, likes, comments, all of those different elements on your various channels? Who you are is important, and who your brand is important, but you need to make sure they're one and the same, that you're branding yourself as your brand. Your brand always stays. Your brokerage may change, but your brand always stays. So we want to help you really focus on building up your brand, your sphere of influence, and hopefully gaining more referrals from your sphere of influence, seeing different tips and tricks that you may put out on social media. You want to be a magnetic personal brand. And real estate is built on real people and real estate and being real. So how can you be real in everything that you do for what you're putting out online? And it's not only online. What are you doing offline? There are so many different ways to brand yourself. I know in our agent workshops, we've gone through a whole variety of different things, from farming, ways that we can brand you on video, open houses, your listings, listing presentations. All of those different elements can all incorporate your brand in them. So trying to think of also print materials, though, if you have special home anniversary cards done or note cards, all of those different items can be part of your brand and who you are. So hopefully this gives you some tips on branding, and I'm always happy to discuss further with you and work on helping you build your brand. Good morning, TNT viewers. I am excited to come at you on TNT today with a topic. And today's topic is listings. So this can mean a couple different things. One, if you already have listings or a listing, how to best leverage that to potentially get more. And two, if you don't currently have any listings, how are we going to help you find more listings, right? We love listings. So the first thing I'm going to say is a statistic, and that's 93% of agents want to find seller leads. So if you love sellers and are looking for seller leads, obviously you're not alone. But how do we best go about finding those seller leads? That's the biggest key here. So there's a variety of different ways that you can do it, and everybody's marketing strategy is different. So we want to consider that first and foremost. Most of you already have your social media channels established. So how can we utilize those existing channels to create more messaging around either one, your existing listings, and or two, potential listings that you want to get? So for listings you already currently have, how are you currently marketing those? What are you doing to capture different details about that listing and really draw people's attention to that listing? Are you taking different footage when you're at media day to save on your phone and utilize once that listing goes active? You could do different camera pans, as an example, to do short videos and then put those on Instagram Reels or IGTV. Are you taking the favorite parts of the home and really telling a story about that home? Have you identified with your sellers what made them choose that property? And are you using that to leverage marketing that property? Every home has a story, right? You've probably heard that. So how can you take the story of why your sellers chose that home and use that in your marketing? What are their favorite aspects of the home? What different things have they done to the home as far as upgrades? Have they added in different things in the backyard? Do they have a built-in kitchen area? Do they have a pool? How can you best market those different parts of the home to draw in that one, buyer audience, and two, other potential sellers that may be watching your video and be impressed with the marketing that you're doing for your current listing? And then the other flip side of it is, what are you doing to attract listing opportunities? Are you showing social proof of what you're currently doing out there in the market? Whether you're working with buyers or sellers, you're always viewing homes, right? So are you sharing some of those different things on social media? a day in the life of, right, can go a long way. But telling stories goes even farther. So how are you putting out a story about your seller and what they love about their home, or about meeting with a client, whether it's a buyer or a seller? Give thought to how you're positioning yourself online and do an audit. Look through your social media post on whatever platform is your preferred platform, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, etc., and review that from somebody that's never met you before. What type of business are you projecting online? Are you showing yourself off as a listing expert? Do you have pictures of you putting the for sale sign in the front yard, going through and doing the listing presentation, contracts, home inspections, right? Open houses. There are so many different items throughout buying or selling a home that you are involved in on a daily basis as a real estate agent that you can really leverage to position yourself as a market expert. So take any of those different ideas and put them out on social media. The more you put out, the more people see you, right? So think about different ways that you can influence your audience to showcase that you are a listing expert.